Yo, what's going on, dudes? HK Titans here with a brand new video for you guys, and in today's video, I'm going to be making a remake of the map Tree Stump. So what I want to do with this remake is I want to turn the map Tree Stump into a water map, because as you guys can see, the map Tree Stump really doesn't have any water features on it. But I think this map would be really cool if I turned it into a water map. So obviously the first thing that we have to do is we have to create our pathway, but I don't know what kind of path I want to use. I mean, I do know what kind of path I want to use. I want to use a water path because obviously we're turning this map into a water map. So we'll probably end up going with maybe like this pathway here, because I think this pathway should look pretty good. If we don't go with this one, we could always go with this one right here, because this is a classic pathway, and I think it looks really good. And we can always change around the path if we don't like the way it turns out in the end. So let's go ahead and get the path set up, and I'll bring you guys back here in just a second. All right, so this should be the basic outline of the pathway for Tree Stump. Now, the next thing we have to do is we have to like straighten out these corners or make them a little bit more circular, because right now they look a little bit jagged. So I want to clean this up just a little bit. So it shouldn't be that hard to clean up. We just need to mess with these nodes just a little bit to make these pathways a little bit more circular. All right, I think that looks pretty good. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to start adding a little bit of detail. So obviously in the map Tree Stump, the biggest thing for this map is the tree stump in the middle of the map. But because we really can't place a tree stump on top of water, the next best thing is going to be adding an island. Now, the area that I'm going to use for the island is going to be the area that has like the built-in beach section, because I think this one would look really good in the center of the map like this. Now, the next thing we want to do, let's come back over the path. Let's go ahead and make the path a little bit smaller. I think this would look pretty good. Now, the next thing I want to do, I want to mess with the area just a little bit more, because right now it just seems a little bit out of place, and I don't want to seem out of place. All right, so there we go. I think that looks pretty good. So the only thing I ended up doing was I ended up changing this path to make it a little bit more circular. And then I also made the center path here, or the center area, a little bit bigger. All right, so now that we have the pathway and the center area set, the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and place down a couple more islands to add a little bit more detail. So on the map of Tree Stump, there's a couple of islands, or not islands, but there's a couple of details in each corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of areas here in the top right, the top left, the bottom left, and the bottom right. That we can go ahead and add a little bit of details by adding those islands. All right, so I went ahead and I added some islands around the map to add a little bit of detail. So now that we have the islands placed around the map, the first thing that I want to work on is I want to work on the center island. So I have a couple of different ideas that I thought would look pretty good. The first idea is to add like a mountain in the center of this island, then add a bunch of like small palm trees around the island. So it would be like a miniature version of Tree Stump. So I went ahead and I went with this rock here. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and copy this rock, and then we'll go ahead and move it, and then we'll make it a little bit smaller to add a little bit of detail around the giant mountain in this center island. Then we'll go ahead and add a couple more details by adding ourselves a couple more rocks. And this will add a little bit more detail to our mountain in the center of the map. And there we go. I think that looks pretty good for like a centralized mountain. And it's going to be like the main focal point of this map. So now the next thing I want to do, I want to go ahead and add some trees around the mountain. That way there's a little bit more detail. And of course, because this is like an island themed map, let's go ahead and use some palm trees. And of course, because I want the mountain to seem really big, I'm going to go ahead and use this style of a palm tree. I'm going to make the palm trees like pretty small. All right, so now we have successfully added a couple of palm trees around our island to give our island a little bit more detail. Now, because the palm trees are so small, I don't think we can get away with like adding stamps. So we're gonna have to come up with something a little bit different to add detail. Maybe we'll just add a little bit of detail by using this stamp here. Like, it's not like a super prominent stamp. I think by adding the stamp, it'll add a little bit of background detail to our island, which is exactly what I was going for. And then let's go ahead and add a couple of these like small tree bushes here, because I think that these small tree bushes would add a little bit more detail as well. Because right now the island's still looking a little bit bland, but if we add these small bushes, it'll add a little bit of effect to our island, and it'll make it look way better. There we go. And I think that should do it for the island. If I didn't make the rock too small, we should be able to fit one tower on top of the rock. So it's kind of similar to Tree Stump, but it's different at the same time. Now, because we chose to go with like a really small aspect for all of our props and stuff, we're gonna have to do the same thing on these 4 islands here. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and add a couple more like mountain features on each of these rocks, because I feel like the mountain features really make these details come to life. All right, so I added a mountain feature up here on this island here. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to add some more mountain features on each of these islands as well. And I think that should do it for the rock features on each of the islands. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and add a couple of palm trees, kind of similar to what we did in the center here. But this time, before we add the palm trees, let's add the detail in the background first. That way we don't have to come back and do it when all of the palm trees are already in place. All right, so I went ahead and I added a couple of boxes over here and a couple of boxes over here. Now the next thing I have to do is I have to go ahead and add a bunch of flowers. Now I would add these stamp features, but the only problem with the stamp is that the flowers are going to look really, really big compared to what we're going for. Actually, you know what? I think I can get away with these flowers because, I mean, they're pretty much the same size as the flowers that I'm going to be using. So you know what? Let's go ahead and use these stamp flowers as well, because I feel like the stamp flowers look perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of a detail around these islands. We'll go ahead and just use a couple of these stamp features, and then I'll go ahead and add the rest of the flowers myself. All right, so I added a couple of flowers with the stamp feature. Now let's go ahead and come back to adding the white and yellow flowers, because I think the white and yellow flowers would look really, really good in contrast to the white ones, or at least the flowers that we can use with the props, because the flowers that we can use with the props can actually move. But the only issue with these flowers is it's going to come in once we start to add shade. So let me go ahead and add some shade to the rocks really quick to see if it's going to make like a big difference. Unfortunately, I don't think I can use, yeah, I can't, because it's going to interfere with the shade feature. So I'm gonna have to go through and I'm gonna have to delete all of these flowers because they just won't work. So I guess we're just gonna have to stick with the flowers that come with the stamps section, because unfortunately, like I was saying, the flowers that we can get from the props, they aren't affected by these shades that we can get from the stamp. So it would look a little bit weird if we just had like a couple of flowers just sticking out where they really seem way brighter than they should, if that makes sense. All right, so now that we've added a couple of the flower features, let's go ahead and add a couple of starfish, because I mean, starfish look cool. Actually, never mind. We really can't use starfish because we're making like a small version. So these starfish would seem ginormous. But what we can do is we can add a couple of these like sandbar features, because these sandbar features look pretty cool. The lighting around the outside looks a little bit off, but I mean, it's perfectly fine. All right, everything seems to be coming together quite nicely. Now the next thing I want to do, let's go ahead, we'll add a couple of like grass features with this to add a little bit something extra in the background. I mean, it's not going to be like too dominant, but it'll still be able to pop out a little bit in the background if you guys pay like really close attention. But again, this is just to add a little bit of extra detail in the background. There we go. I think that should be fine. Now the next thing we want to do, I don't want to start adding the trees just yet, because I want to add a couple of rocks. So add a couple of rocks with the stamp feature, because I think that the rocks with the stamp feature look pretty good. And again, this is just to add a little bit of detail in the background, because I hate having like backgrounds that have like no detail. And are there any other props that we can use? We could actually use this with these small crates. We see to like make it way smaller. There we go. We had just a little bit of detail to the boxes by just adding a couple of these vines. And I think it really makes the boxes have a little bit more detail. So we'll just change the way it's shaped really quick to make it like curve around the box a little bit more. And I think that looks good. All right, now the next thing we want to do, I want to add a little bit more detail, like I was saying, but I just don't know what props would look good in the background. Like, we already have a couple of boxes. I was thinking about adding the ship, but I don't feel like adding like the little like dinghy would look good on this map. Yeah, looking at everything, I think the only thing left for me to add is the palm trees. And then, of course, after we added the palm trees, we'll add the shader effects. But of course, the palm trees are going to be the biggest point, or the biggest prop of this map. Then of course we need to remember to add a little bit of a variation with the different palm trees that we're adding. That way they don't all look exactly the same. So we can add a variation by rotating it, then we can tilt it to add a little bit more. Then we can make it a little bit bigger as well, because not all palm trees are the exact same size. All right, and I think that looks pretty good for adding some like palm trees around the different islands and stuff. The next thing I want to do is I want to change the size of some of these palm trees here in the center, because right now they all look kind of similar. So I want to make like a couple like really stand out for being bigger. Then we'll have a couple seem a little bit smaller than the rest. because one thing I forgot to do after I finished with the center island is I forgot to change the size of a couple of these palm trees. So I kind of forget the thing that I told you guys not to do. I actually did it myself. All right, there we go. So we have a couple of different sized palm trees, so that makes it look way better. All right, so now the next thing I want to do, because this island seemed, or I wanted this island to seem a little bit less packed with palm trees compared to the other three. So the next thing I want to do is I want to take a couple of these like bush props and I want to add them around this island up here, because luckily the top of the bush looks pretty dark. So once we start adding these shader effects, it shouldn't stand out too much compared to the flowers. So now that we have all the bushes placed down, the next thing I want to do is I want to add a couple of crabs to bring to bring a little bit of life to our islands. All right, so we added a couple of crabs and not too big a deal. Let's also add a couple of sharks as well. We'll make these fish a little bit bigger. Well, actually, compared to the size of the islands, I think the sharks wouldn't be as big as the islands. So let's go ahead and reduce the size just a little bit. And let's add a couple of these around the water. We don't need to have them too close again. We just want to add a little bit of a detail in the background. All right, so now that we've placed some sharks around the water, the next thing I want to do is I want to check to see how these like light effects look in the background. What if we added like a couple here? Would this look good? I just need to get it so it's facing the right direction. There we go. I actually think that looks really, really good. We'll add a couple more like their sunspots, and we'll add these around the map. Again, just to add a little bit of a detail in the background. All right, then let's go ahead and take a step back and see how this looks. I think this is coming along pretty nicely. Then we have a couple, or then we have this rock feature, or not rock feature, but like light feature. But I don't think that light feature looks as good as this one. So we'll add a couple more over here just to add a little bit more detail where it looks a little bit barren. And I think that looks good. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and add some shade effects to the background. I don't know about the shade effects, guys, because the plants that I thought would make like a big difference are actually making a little bit of a bigger difference than I thought they would. So let's choose a different shade effect because this one's not as dark as the other one. All right, so I didn't go crazy with the shading effect this time because I think like the subtle darker background underneath the trees looks way better. But I don't like how it's like really barren right here. So let's go ahead and add ourselves another stamp effect, and then we'll use the flower stamp effect because this flower stamp effect just looks really, really good. There we go. And then we went ahead and removed that little bit of a barren spot right there by just adding a little bit of flowers. So now the last thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and play our map. Actually, before we play our map, let's go ahead and add a background effect. So the background effect that we'll go for, what if we add like a rain effect? I mean, it kind of looks good. Yeah, let's go with this. All right, so now that we've chosen our background, let's go ahead and choose the music as well. And the music that I'm going to use is going to be Sails Again because I like this track a lot. So now that we have everything set, let's go ahead and back out and name our map and go ahead and play it. So the name of our map is going to be Tree Stump Remix. I think this looks pretty good for like a remix map. Actually, there's one thing I want to change really, really quick. I just noticed it when I backed out, and it's going to be the path. So this path right here, it seems a little bit wonky. Let's go ahead and like make it seem a little bit better with a little bit more like smooth curvature. All right, I think that looks a little bit better. Maybe we'll go ahead and like move this one down just a touch, and there we go. I think that fixed it. Yep, that looks way better. Actually, I say it looks way better, but it still looks a little bit off up here, but that's all right because I think this is exactly the way that the path on Tree Stump is as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into a Tree Stump remix. Now, for this game mode, I will be playing on easy standard, obviously, because I want to see if you guys can actually beat this map yourselves. I probably should change around my hero, but because we're just playing on easy, it should be fine. Now we have like giant monkeys playing on like a small map. I actually kind of really like the way that this map turned out. Like, it's not like overly complicated, but it's kind of similar to the Monkey Meadow water version map that I made a couple weeks ago, which is exactly what I was going for. Because I said it in that video, and I'm going to say it in this video as well, we really don't have enough water maps in Bloons TD6. So I think that's what I want to do. I want to remake a bunch of the old BTD6 maps and turn them into water versions of themselves, because I think that would be really, really cool. Oh, and I almost forgot to check. Can we place a tower on top of our mountain here? No, super unfortunate. I really wanted to be able to place like a tower on top of this island, but it looks like we can't, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it's all right. Now, another thing that I was debating on doing, I was debating on adding like another island here and adding like another rock feature to like replace the logs, but I didn't think it really made too much sense to like just add an island to add a log on the map. So this is definitely going to be a easier version of the map Tree Stump. Actually, is it going to be an easier version? Because on Tree Stump, you can place towers on top of the tree stump, but on this map, you can't. But I do think that this map will be a little bit easier because we don't have as many barriers. Oh, would you look at this? I do have like one spot on the center island where I can place an alchemist. I have no idea how this like even makes sense. Oh wait, we have a couple more spots. Okay, so like there are a couple spots where you can fit an alchemist. They're just like really small, like pixel perfect spots. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and place an alchemist right here. That way we can go ahead and outbuff our monkey sub. I think that would work out pretty well. And then of course we'll go ahead and grab ourselves some armor piercing darts as well. And then once we grab our armor piercing darts, we'll go ahead and grab ourselves stronger stimulant, and that should be more than enough to deal with round 40. So I don't know, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, you guys think that this is a pretty sweet remix of the map Tree Stump? Now I know we don't have a tree stump in the middle of the map, but like I was saying, this is just a remix of that map using the similar path and just with a little bit of a different theme. But anyways, dudes, let me know in the comments below if you guys know of any maps that you guys would like to see me do a remixed version of. Like, if you guys want to see me make an expert map easier, or if you guys want to see me make a beginner map harder, feel free to let me know in the comments below, because I do read the comments and I think it would be really cool to get you guys involved on some of the map selections, or at least the map selections that I make a remixed version of. But all right, dudes, here is the code if you guys would like to play this map for yourself. But anyways, dudes, that's gonna do it for the video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you guys hit that like button, and I'll see you dudes in the next one.